Hey friends, Deanna here with Homestead and Chill, and welcome to our new orchard space. Well, it's not quite done yet. We still have a few more trees to plant, as well as covering this entire space in bark mulch. But I figured before we actually cover everything up, and while the irrigation lines are exposed, I would show you the irrigation system that we just installed out here. So in this video, I will walk you through how we laid down all the drip lines and drip emitters, the 4-valve control station that we installed up the hill, as well as the solar-powered control panel that operates it all, which I'm really excited to share with you. And this video is to accompany a written blog post that goes over all the details and photos and stuff, so I'll make sure to add a link to that in the caption, as well as a link to all of the supplies that you'll see us working with today for this project. And yes, last but not least, I will definitely follow up later once we're finished with this space with a video and post about how we created it all. So what's up with the burlap, these natural mounds or terraces that we created, the plants we chose, all those good details. So hit like and subscribe and follow along to stay tuned for that. Okay, so before we head up to the top of the hill where the main water line is, and I'll show you the valves and controls up there, figured I'd give you a quick overview of this system of what it's actually watering and the different zones that we set up. So as you can see, there are 4 different risers here in the PVC that are converting to drip irrigation lines that we split up into 4 different zones. So one of them feeds all of the fruit trees coming along this inner line here. There are still 2 trees to come, but you can see those lines kind of going along the middle of the terrace for the fruit trees. Another one of the zones feeds all of these smaller like pollinator shrubs that are on the face and border of our terraces. Those are all more drought tolerant once they grow in. The third zone is a loop that feeds this little fig tree here and goes down the fence line and back up down in this area where we have some loquats planted along the fence line, avocado, and there will be pineapple guava or feijoa to come. And then the fourth and final zone is going to run down, it's not connected yet, but going to run down to that far space down there where there will be just more pollinator shrubs and plants down at the bottom. So the reason that we broke it up into 4 different zones is 2 reasons. One is that it's smart to separate out different types of plants based on their water needs, right? So the fruit trees, as they grow and mature, are probably going to have a different water demand in terms of frequency and amount as these smaller drought-tolerant shrubs. So we want to be able to run those at different times as needed. The other main thing is to not put too much pressure or demand on each irrigation line or zone. There really is no hard fast rule, but it's general best practice to not run the black tubing, this is a 1/2-inch drip tubing, more than about 100 feet, maybe 200 feet, and without tons and tons of emitters on every system. If we were to run this all on one giant line, we would probably not have very good pressure or flow by the very end of the line. All right, so here are the valves and the control panel and the cute little solar panel that control it all. So basically all that was up here when we first got started was a main water line and 1 hose bib. So first we turned off the water to the property and we ended up cutting the line back here so that we had room to install all this, and decided just to go ahead and move the tap over to this side. And if you've never cut PVC before or worked with gluing PVC, it's really simple and easy to do. Maybe I'll even clip in a little video right here to show you, but definitely nothing to be intimidated by. To glue PVC, you just use a primer first, starting on the male end, and go around and around till it gets a nice good coating. Also repeat that in the female end or socket of the piece you want to glue. Then you add the glue. After a few seconds, the primer should be tacky but not dry. Just a round or 2 of glue is good. And then press them together and hold for about 30 seconds. And then it's probably a little overkill to put 2 in, but we decided to put valves on either side of this hose bib, just because every time we needed to work on this tap, we ended up having to turn off the water and drain the lines for the entire property. So I wanted a shutoff valve before that, but then I decided, well, it's probably a good idea to put one on this side too. I like to usually isolate my different components of a water system, because then that way we can turn this off if we want to work on these guys and still have a functional tap, you know, to fill up watering cans or hook even a simple drip system to if we needed to do repairs over here. And then as far as these valves go, and I should mention too, everything that I'm going to show you and the parts that I'm going to link in the caption are for 3/4 inch PVC size, because that's what we're working with here, but they come in different sizes, so you'll just need to choose what works for you. And on that note too, I do see a lot of folks actually bury these types of systems and or insulate them for winter freezing concerns, so just make sure to do what is appropriate for your climate. And now I'm going to talk you through how we assembled each of these valve head assemblies. They come in different pieces, and we did, one at a time. And let me give you a view from the back real quick too, so you can kind of see the manifold that I created. So I ended up assembling this whole thing down in our barn, just so I wasn't having to, kneel in the dirt and get everything dirty and everything. So I assembled this whole 4-valve part on its risers, but not with this outlet side. So the water comes up this side, down and out and down that way. So I had the risers attached, the valves attached, the filters, all that good stuff, all 4 of them attached together, so that I could just come in and glue it in at the end, and then kind of plug and play after that. And it is buried, so you can't see it, but we did leave a stub out, so the PVC comes to about here, so that in the future we could add 2 more zones to this if we choose to. The control panel operates 6 valves total. We only need 4 right now, but it'll be really easy to cut in later if we wanted to add a couple more zones. So I hope you can see that all well enough, but basically, the water comes in from the main line and goes up these risers and into these valves. So now let me show you each component for these guys. So the water comes up, and then this is an anti-siphon valve, or ASV valve, and it serves a couple purposes. One is it provides backflow protection to the system, and it also serves as the on-off or control valve to actually turn these guys on, which you can turn them on manually by turning the top right here, or through the wired bits that are connected to the control panel, operated on and off. So we can go like this, and you can hear the water kick on, and that zone is on. And then you turn it off. I don't usually manually do it that way, but if you need to and your solar panel or your control panel isn't working, that's how those turn on and off. And so to connect these, we just had a PVC riser here, and we glued on a threaded component, and then it just screws onto the top of that. And any of our threaded components throughout this system, wherever it's screwed on, we did use plumber's tape to help make a nice tight seal. And then if you're wondering about the gray pipe, this is Schedule 80, which has better UV resistance and is more durable than white PVC, so that's always recommended for any above ground application, even though this is going to get covered with a valve box here. And then a quick note about these ASV valves before we move on to what's downstream from them is they come with an AC solenoid. This is called the solenoid here with the wires, the on-off part, and the solar panel little add-on that we have for our control box operates with DC solenoids, but it's really easy to swap them out. So we just had to buy separate DC solenoids, take off the ones that it came with when the water is off, so have the water valved off, and then just switch them out before you do your wiring, and then it can operate on solar. Then after the ASV valve, we have a filter, and this is just a basic canister filter. This unscrews so you can take it out and clean it, perform maintenance, or even put a new filter inside, and that just prevents any gunk from going inside your drip line and your little tiny emitters and having them clog up. A couple things to note about this though is these filters are not meant to be under constant pressure, so it is important to install them after your valve. So water is only going through them when the system is on. Also, they can reduce your flow by a couple psi, 2 to actually 8 psi. So that's why we have it installed before our pressure regulator, because that means after this pressure regulator we're getting a nice even 25 psi as per spec, rather than, sorry, you'll have to excuse the cars driving by every once in a while, but rather than this going after the regulator, then you would be potentially losing another 5 to 8 psi after that 25. And then last but not least is the pressure regulator. So most drip irrigation systems need to operate under 20 to 30 psi. Any higher can blow out your parts. And so if you happen to have your main line is below 40, you can probably get away without having a pressure regulator. Ours was definitely higher though, so we brought them down to 20 psi or 25 psi before they come down and out and into the rest of the system. So my process and what worked for me for assembling this whole manifold system was I created and put together each station completely. So I threaded and screwed on, the valve, the filter, and the pressure reducer, stopping here, as well as its riser, and had that glued on and then screwed on. Just because when you're twisting all of these kind of big parts, they might kind of get in the way of each other. So I got those all nice and tight and put together. Then I went ahead and had this little bottom part already assembled with these T's. So it's just PVC, T, another T, spaced however far apart. I think I did about 6 inches apart. And then one by one, I put them down and glued them into their individual T's to kind of get that to all come together. And now the wiring. So once we got all of this in, we went ahead and again replaced the AC solenoids with the DC solenoids just to make it compatible with solar. And then we have right here is a 7-way irrigation wire. You can see all the colors, but essentially this is a wire that has 7 different strands in it. They're all different colors, and you always want to choose one that has the amount of valves that you're going to control plus 1 common wire. Because we left a stub out for 2 more stations, that means I wanted 6 wires plus that common strand, so a 7 wire. They make like a 13 in one if you were doing like a 12 valve station. But essentially it's a really handy color-coded system where each strand has a different color. Okay, this should be a little easier to see. So this here is that 7-strand wire, and you can see all the different colors are kind of wrapped up in this black casing. Then we come out here and I have the blue, the red, the green, and the orange connected to my 4 valves. These 2 are just my future ones. They're not connected to anything. I just put a cap on them for safety. But those 4 color-coded ones are the 4 operable valves that we have. And they're connected to the red one coming out of the solenoid. Then the black ones coming out of each of these solenoids are all joined together in a common wire, which I chose is white from my 7-in-1 wire. So I have all the blacks connected to one common and all of the reds connected to a color. Again, it looks a little bit messy now, but if you just go one by one, it's pretty easy to do. So that'll be all connected protected under the control box. But then what we did is run that 7-in-1 wrapped wire in through some PVC. So we just made a little PVC riser that comes here and up the outside of our little makeshift valve post here and goes up inside the control box. Now the solar control panel. So this actually is not just a solar box. This Hunter XC hybrid can operate just on batteries, or you can purchase this little separate solar kit to make it completely solar, which is what we did. So let's take a peek inside and get this guy off. Set that there. So here is where you can see those colored wires that I mentioned, one for each of the zones that we're operating, and then the white was that common wire. So back here in the back, you can see the black coming in and up through the bottom hole here, and that's where that 7-in-1 wire comes in, and then those few unused cap lines are just capped in there. And then how you connect each zone is you just unscrew one of the little screws, and you have the end stripped, so your bit of your wire will not be coated at that point, and you just tuck it up and behind the screw part, and then just screw it on nice and tight so that there is contact, and then it is good to go. So we just repeated that process to get those all connected. So as you can see, number 1 is orange, number 2 is blue, number 3 is red, so then I'm able to go down there and compare. And so I wanted to keep these in a certain order, so I did valve 1, 2, 3, 4 that way, knowing that that was our trees, our shrubs, and so forth. And then to add the solar component is super, super easy with this guy. So in addition to just swapping out and having the DC solenoids instead of the AC solenoids, there is a separate battery pack. So this XC controller came with a different battery pack if you wanted to use traditional batteries. And all you do is pop it out. There's a little, clip right here to do that. So you pop that out and then put in this this rechargeable battery pack instead. And there's like a little clip to connect them up inside. And then there is just wire. This came with a big long spool of wire, so you can install your solar panel really far away from your system if you needed to. But ours was nice and close, so we just cut the wire and tidied it up. But then you just mount your solar panel. We have ours going southwest for maximum sun exposure. and then we just come down and inside, and it comes up through that same little hole in the bottom there, and then it just connects to its own little wire that goes back in to the battery pack. So that's already attached up inside the battery pack back there. And it's as easy as that. So now the solar panel is connected to the battery, it's charging the battery, and we're running completely on solar. So you can see if I want to turn the station on manually, we could turn station 1 on we'll just run it for a couple minutes. Run. And you hear that? And there it goes. So this is really awesome programmable. You can do, multiple times a week, all the, normal irrigation controllers. And there is an additional, I think like a rain sensor and stuff that you can get that we didn't get. But yeah, all kinds of handy ways to control your irrigation system. All right, and one other quick alternative I wanted to mention too, if you're trying to irrigate an area and you're nowhere near electricity, but you're not using wired valves like this, a really simple way to do that is with a battery-powered hose timer. I will share a little clip of them here, but basically they have some ones that have multiple zones, so you can run more than one drip line off of them. They operate on batteries, but they last for a really long time. We've used some of ours for years and never even had to replace the batteries, and they're a great alternative, again, for spaces that don't have electricity. So before we installed all this, we just had the one tap up here, a battery-powered timer, and then just ran a black drip line all the way down to the avocados that we had already planted down there, and it worked like a charm. All right, and then heading down the hill to the actual project space, we decided to do PVC the whole way down. We have schedule 80 showing right here, even though it's buried because we had some left over from another project, but we did switch to all just regular schedule 40 traditional drinking water PVC once we got about halfway down, because that is more affordable. But then coming down, we want to run PVC as far as possible until closer to where we're actually going to irrigate. The PVC is more durable. It's not going to get chewed on by gophers, anything like that. It's going to maintain a better flow and a better pressure. And instead of running black irrigation tubing, all the way down the hill. So we get all the way down here and then had 4 risers come up for each of these stations. There's some hawks. It's hard to concentrate when all the birds are talking. But yeah, so then, and I went ahead and I installed the, this is a threaded cap on the end, or a threaded 90, on the top of each riser, bringing this up to basically surface level, kind of headed in the direction I knew I wanted the drip lines to go. You don't have to set them up all wonky like that. They could all come out one way and then move, but just to reduce the amount that I had to bend these lines or anything like that. Again, I knew this one was going that way, these were feeding that, and that was gonna go down to that future pollinator planting area at the bottom. All right, so now let's cover how to connect this drip tubing to PVC. And don't mind the standing water there. We had just flushed the PVC lines, which is always a good idea before you start adding your drip components. So this is a coupler that threads onto the PVC, and then the drip tubing can connect to the other end. I always like to add plumber's tape to make my connections nice and tight. Here we're screwing it on just hand tight, but not over tightening it. And then we really like to use these Permalock couplers or components for our drip tubing. They're really durable and reusable. So you start by unscrewing them or screwing back the threaded part all the way, then you push your tubing on, and then you screw it back on to tighten down over the end of the tubing. All right, now here we're getting zone 1 all dialed in, running the tubing where we need it, including using another one of those Permalock adapters, but using a T here to go ahead and branch our line to 2 different tiers or terraces. Then we're just running the black irrigation tubing near the plants where we want to put emitters and securing them down with nice sturdy 6-inch landscape staples. When you get to the end of a line, it's really easy to cap off. Simply make a cut just past where you want to end it and slide over one of these figure 8 clamps. Bend the line in half back over itself and insert it in the other end of the figure 8, and now you have a capped line. And then it's really easy to add various drip emitters to your 1/2-inch tubing. So start by punching a hole in the line, and then insert whatever type emitter you want to use. Right here we're using a little bubbler that will kind of trickle down to the plants below and saturate these mounds nicely. And I should note that in most cases, I would keep our drip emitters a little closer to the base of each plant, but here we are specifically trying to encourage these roots to grow back towards the slope because we planted these as part of this natural terracing system where their roots are going to grow in to help stabilize the slope. All right, so now we have the lines all laid out and the emitters installed for zone 1. But all of these plants are drought tolerant. Most of them are California natives. So eventually in the future, we will want to switch out those bubbler or drip emitters that put out a decent amount of water for something more conservative, like a 1 gallon an hour emitter, which will be easy to do just by popping out the other emitter and putting a different type in. To connect other types of emitters to your 1/2-inch tubing, you can use 1/4-inch tubing that's connected with one of these barbed couplers. And then I'd already punched a hole in the main line back here, tucking it hidden behind the rocks, and going to just pop that into the hole with the assistance of some pliers. Then we can just run that microtubing over to the base of the plant, this little lavender here, cut it where we want to end it, and push on a traditional 1 gallon an hour emitter. They also make these bubblers that are connected to little stakes that we also attach with the 1/4-inch microtubing, and I like to use those for our fruit trees and shrubs like this blueberry. So after we finished with zone 1, we followed a similar process to set up all of the tubing and emitters and tees for zone 2, which runs down between the fruit trees and patches of comfrey that are planted between them. And it looks a little crazy, but they're all just pinned down with the same landscape staples. And again, this whole space is going to be covered in bark mulch soon, so it won't be visible, and it will also pad us from walking on the lines. All right, friends, and that's it for today's tutorial. Thanks so much for following along and hanging out with me in Badger. I hope you found that useful. If so, hit the like and subscribe button, and make sure to check us out on homesteadandchill.com for even more gardening tips and tutorials. See you next time.